Oh my gosh. I feel like I want to spend a day with each and every one of you talking about what you talked about because as I'm sitting here listening to all the questions, I was like, oh, I want to remember to talk about that and I want to talk about that. But I want to begin with the way that I begin all the talks that I do with parents. And it's by saying, I have never met a parent who didn't want life to be better for their children than it was for them. I have never met a parent who woke up in the morning and said, now, what could I do today to really mess up my kids? And I have never met a parent who was not doing the best they could with the information and the resources, the support, and the model that they had. And I think that that's the most important way that we meet parents where they're at, because it has to be a safe place, because otherwise they can't hear anything we have to share. And I just wanted to say, I now have a 9-month-old great granddaughter who also barks. So when you ever said that, that just absolutely touched my heart. My granddaughter sent me a video the other day of her trying to stand, and she kept making this very breathy sound. And it suddenly occurred to me that she was mimicking their dogs, her first siblings. She was panting with them. It was just amazing. And I just love that question about how can I help new parents to have this information but not overwhelm them with it, because it sounds like a lot. And one of the things I think I need to say right up front, just the phrase the evolved nest, as beautiful as it is, can be intimidating. Like, what is that? What is an evolved nest? It's kind of a complicated phrase. And even though, we have enough contacts with it that we know what it is, for someone just hearing it, it might be a little off-putting. And so I don't even know if that would be the first phrase that I used when I wanted to share this information. I might work my way into it. And now we have the science about this that is called this. And it's so validating for those of us who've been doing this work for so long to have hard science that now we are forced to be reckoned with, because we have the science that says, yes, this is so. I'm thinking that I don't know that we can possibly cover all the ground in the time that we have today. I do have a hard end at 1:15 because I have another commitment. But I'm hoping, Lisa, that we can do more of this if everybody is interested to do more of this, because there is so much that I would love to share. So when my daughter was born, and she was 53 in September, and when I finally had to go back to work, I could not bear. I cried every morning when I left her at childcare. I couldn't take it. And I had a family childcare provider, and she said, Pam, why don't you open your own family childcare, and then you can still work but be with your daughter? And I thought, I'm going to do that. And so I did. So doing that for 22 years adds 50 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, adds up to about 55,000 hours that I spent with and observing children and interacting with their parents. And I like to think that I had kind of a unique situation, because when I think the very first parenting book that I ever read was Liberated Parents, Liberated Children by Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish. My childcare provider recommended it to me. And it blew my mind that there was all this more to know about parenting than I had any idea. And what happened was that book led to another book, which led to another book, which led to another book. And I used to tell people that I graduated from the University of Bibliography, because I would find in every book more books that I wanted to read. And the more I learned, the more I started sharing with my daycare parents, with other childcare providers. And before long, I was doing workshops and I was making, presentations at childcare training events. And it really just kind of evolved like on the job training, because I was still raising my own children and helping to raise other people's children. And it wasn't until I discovered Joe Pierce's work that I got it. It not just that we needed to meet the needs of children, but why we needed to meet the emotional needs of children so that we could create that bond. So if I could change one thing about my book, and I actually may do that in the 20th anniversary audio edition, I would make chapter 7, which was the last chapter, chapter 1, because parenting never used to be and was never intended to be a 1 or 2 person job. And it originally was a 6 class series, and so was originally going to be a 6 chapter book based on the series. And I kept getting this feedback from parents, this is too hard. We can't do this. This is just too hard. And I thought, why are they saying this? I've made it as clear as I can. And it was because they're trying to do it alone. And so chapter 7 is called The Needs of Parents. And in that, we look at how can we meet our children's needs, and how can we create a family of choice if we don't have biological family around us, or at least on the same wavelength as we are, because that's what it really takes to do connection parenting. We cannot do it in isolation. And so again, the evolved nest, I mean, it just, the two, connection parenting and evolved nest, to me just intertwine so beautifully. And that's what we're all trying to do, is give this information to parents to validate their heart, like my heart. I wanted to be with my child. And I think that, parents are so conflicted that they have to work and they want to be with their child. And not everyone's going to open a childcare. That's just not going to happen for everyone. So what ways can we find to do that? And I used to have parents actually tell me, I'm worried that my child is going to love you more than they love me because you're with them so many more of their waking hours than I am. And my reply to that would usually be, I mean, there's no way they're ever going to love me more than they're going to love you. But you want them to have a bond with me. They should not spend an entire day with someone they do not have a bond with. And sadly, that's what's happening for so many children in childcare. So I made it really important that our childcare became a village. We would have monthly pizza parties where the parents would show up on a Friday night and they'd all bring pizzas and we'd share. And so that they knew the parents of the other children and could be part of their village of these children who were together and spending their days together every day. And I wouldn't accept a child into my program until I had done a home visit, because if a child has seen me at their home, it's going to feel much safer to them to stay with me in my home. And so that made a huge difference. It gave me a very big window into this child's life who was going to be spending their days with me. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can improve childcare. And God bless all the people who do childcare, because I still work with them. I still present at their conferences, and they give their heart and soul to this every day, and for minimal pay and hard, long work. So I think finding ways that we can make childcare better, because it's not going to go away. Other people caring for our children is not something new. When we had the extended family, it was the parents who went out and did the work, and the children stayed with their grandparents in the home. So being cared for by others is nothing new, but being cared for by strangers is what is new. That's what's different. And we need people that are our childcare people to not be strangers. We need to do those home visits. We need to have them be part of the extended family. I used to tell my parents, we are co-parenting your children. That's what we're doing. And so, that's just one of the aspects. And so I'm just I know I'm jumping around, but the thoughts of all the things that you've said to me this morning just kind of keep popping up. And I've been asked to speak at a school in March, and it's a high school, and it's an alternative high school. And I said, so you want me to speak to parents of teenagers? And I said, well, I need to tell you something. When I was parenting my children as teenagers, we weren't dealing with screens. It was not a fact of our life. And so now the enemy of connection is not just physical separation. It's not because they're gone to childcare and gone to school. That separation is happening under our roof. You know, we could all be in the same room, but if everybody's on their own screen, we're not connected. We're not. And I said, but if I don't want to give a talk on that because I don't feel like I'm in a position to be an expert on how do we maintain connection with our teenagers, with screens being such a big factor of our life. I said, but if we can make it a panel discussion, what I can talk about is connection. And so we can talk about how can we still do connection when our children are that age. And there is such fierce competition from screens to have connection. You know, what can we offer that's better? And I'm very excited. One of the articles for the summer edition that I was the guest editor for was Erin Lochner's Opt-Out Family, the chapter 4 from her book. And what I love is she's like, we have to offer something better than screens. That's how we're going to keep connected to our children in spite of screens. So that's one of the things that we could talk about. But the other thing that I would invite you to do, in the first chapter of my book, we do this exercise where I ask parents to take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and on the left-hand side, the column, write a list of all the things that you want for your children, all the good stuff, all the things you hope will be part of their childhood and their life. And then in the right-hand column, make a list of all the things you don't want to happen to your children, for them to experience or to do with your children. And then I say, okay, looking at your do want list, put a check mark next to everything on that list that you yourself experience. Because that will be one of your parenting strengths, because you had a model of that. You had an experience of that. Everything that you didn't check mark is going to be one of your parenting challenges, because you had no model of that. You had no experience of that. So you'll need to actively and intentionally learn how to do that. And then on the right-hand column, put a check mark next to everything on the don't want list that you yourself did experience. And the room goes totally silent, because for the most part, most people's majority of their check marks are in the right-hand column. And so those are also parenting challenges, because it is so challenging not to give what we got. In the same way that it's very challenging to give what we didn't get, it's even more challenging to not give what we did get. And so that kind of becomes our parenting inventory, if you will, of our parenting, like a roadmap of where we need to go with parenting in the way that we really want to parent. And it can be a pretty sobering awakening to realize these things. So I invite you, when you have time, to just do that exercise for yourself and to share it with other parents, because it really grounds us in looking at what was our model, what did we experience, and how do we go from there to connection parenting. And people will say to me, but coercive parenting works. And I'll say, yes, it does, until they're as big as we are. And then they're not going to go sit in timeout. They're not. And so by the time they are as big as we are, we want something much stronger in place than coercion. And connection is so much stronger than coercion. And so if our focus is more on how do we maintain connection than how do we control children's behavior, which we can't do anyway, it just changes the whole direction of our parenting. So the combination of having a village, which we definitely, absolutely is part of the Evolved Nest, is to create that village. And it's not easy to create a village. It is work. It is work, but it's necessary work. And, our children need that. Even if their biological grandparents, aunts, or uncles don't live within a distance that they can participate in their, daily, weekly life, then there are so many grandparents out there whose grandchildren are far away, who would love to read this child a story, or who would love to come and rock that baby. There's just so many ways that we can. It's such a win-win when we bring people into our life to be part of our village. I love the story that I tell in chapter 7 about the difference between parents' needs being met and them not being met. I say, imagine that your parenting partner has gone away on business for a week. And my oldest daughter is actually in that position right now. Her husband is in Sweden on business, and she's parenting my 2 grandchildren solo for the 2 weeks. And it's just been one of those weeks that, you had to call the vet for the dog, and the car broke down, and the washer wasn't working, and the kids were sick. And it's now Friday night, and you get a phone call from your partner saying their plane has been grounded for fog and they won't be back until Saturday. How do you think you feel about being with your children that night? You got nothing left. I got nothing. I got nothing left to give. But children don't know that it's not about them. And so if we don't make every effort to get the support that we need, then they're going to take that personally. And I have friends, this couple, that I so admire their personal policy. If one of them has to be away, it is their job to replace themselves to their partner for that weekend or that week to line up the support. It's not the job of the parent who's staying with the children. It's the job of the parent who's going to be away. So contrast that scenario with it's a Saturday morning, your good friend whom your child adores or children adore shows up at your door and says, I'm giving you the day off, and I'm going to spend the day with your children. You go. And the children are cheering because they love this person. It's going to be fun. So you have no guilt. And they're like, oh, and here's some money. Treat yourself today. Don't come back until 5 o'clock. Imagine that you go and you fill your cup, you do whatever it is that fills your cup, and you come back at 5 o'clock. How do you think you feel about being with your children? Right? You're happy to see them. You probably got them something while you were out that day. And they feel that too. They feel your total joy of being with them. So that's the difference in having support and not having support. So I just, when I work with parents, I really put a lot of emphasis on let's find you some support, because this is not a job that was ever intended to be done alone. So those are the things that rose up for me. So if you will remind me again of some of the areas I haven't touched on, those were the ones that came up the most strongly for me. You want to give me a question, Lisa?
Sure. And I understand you are answering the questions through your stories of experience. So, and you were talking about, let's start with Dara, and how do you maintain connection with teens? You were saying you're getting ready to talk to that group at the high school.
Right.
Um, and their screens is a new thing.
It is. So I think that we have, I mean, first of all, you have to talk about it, with your children. I always say to parents who come into my connection parenting, later, like maybe their child is 12 or 13, and they say, I don't even know where to begin because this is not how I've been parenting. And this is not what my children are used to. And I just always say, you'll need to sit down and talk with them and say, so I've learned some new things, and I'm not happy with the way I've been being a parent to you. And I don't like some of the ways that I've been. And I'm going to be working on changing that. And you have my total permission to tell me if anything I say to you feels disrespectful, if anything that I say feels unfair or hurtful, and we will talk about it. And that's a huge leap to take. It's a really big leap to take. But I see it as the only place to begin if we're coming into this information much later. and we were just doing what we knew and doing what our model was. And now we see that it's not taking us where we want to go, is to really sit down with that. And so I think the same thing applies with teenagers, to sit down and say, so screens, remember when we used to read aloud together? Remember when we used to do board games together, have meals together? And just really have a conversation about it. Like, I want to see our family have more of that. And I also want to respect your need to do what you do on screens. And I mean, the thing that's really hard, I think, with screens is that they're being used in school. So it's not even like that, kids are just on screens, playing games, video games, or Minecraft, or, whatever it is that they're doing. It's just a fact of their life every single day. And so it is a huge factor that to be reckoned with. And that's what I intend to talk about, and to get, input from parents of, well, what happens when you try to say no screens at the dinner table, or, whatever limits. But I love what Erin says about making what we have to offer more appealing on screen. She said we can give them what screens never can. And for us to all be working on, because I certainly don't have all those answers, but I think collectively we can come up with some really great stuff to address that for sure.
To tag on to what you're saying, Pam, there was a writer, Mark Brady, years ago, who was a psychiatrist, and he wrote the blog before blogs. He had a website called The Committed Parent, which was kind of tongue in cheek how hard this is to maintain connection in this world. But but he said, the key is you want a sovereign being. You want to create a sovereign being, and that means what you're just saying is to allow, he said, if you want to raise a child that can navigate this world well and maintain their sovereignty and their capacity to ask questions, question authority, think, imagine, see different ways of being, then you need to be in the hot seat and you need to give them permission to ask you the hard questions and be ready. They're going to practice on you first.
Yes.
So this is his whole approach was the antithesis of authoritarian models back then. And I did put the opt-out book um, link, well, the chapter, we have a chapter at Kindred that ran that in Pam's issue that she did last summer when I was having eye surgery. Bless you, Pam. All right, let's see. I'm going to keep an eye on the time. We're good for time here. We've got about 25 minutes. And Tom has the big hard question, which we kind of just tapped on, I guess, a little bit by accident. How do we counter the cultural influence that seems to be anti-connection? Do you have a big picture answer for that, Pam?
Well, I don't know that it's a big picture answer, but I think it really is in little ways. How often, one of the ways I stay, oh, and this will address another question too, of like, how do I live this? Um, One of the ways that I stay connected to my grandson, who is a senior this year, incredibly busy. He teaches gymnastics, he does gymnastics, he maintains a 4.0 average at his school, and has very little discretionary time, and he loves screens as much as any other one. Um, but we will have coffee dates, like he knows I want to be with him, or I'll find a book for him. And like last night, I stopped over there after we had a book baby shower at one of our local libraries. And my thing is popcorn. It's between dark chocolate and popcorn are probably, and coconut water are probably my three favorite foods. So I made these Valentine's, I call, love made edible, where I filled these heart decorated cups with popcorn and put it in a cellophane bag with a bow. So I stopped to deliver those at his house. And my daughter's like, Cal, grandma's here. He's like, yep. And he doesn't come out. And she's like, Cal, grandma has something to give you. So he comes out and I said, here, love made edible. And he was like, oh, and gave me a hug. And I said, carry on. Like, you're dismissed. You can go back to what you were doing. I just needed you to come and get a little bit of love. And I think, not making him sit down on the couch and have a conversation with me when he was clearly in the middle of doing something else, but just that little check in of, I love you. Here it is. Here's some love for you. and finding all the ways that we can do that. You know, he's studying Mandarin Chinese. So whenever I find a book that, you know, would be in that realm, I will bring it to him and I'll say, I know you might not want it, but take it to your teacher, okay? And tell her to find a home for it. Because my other thing that I do is called Book Fairy. So I never can resist getting a book to its rightful owner, which is the person it would be most relevant to. So I think just getting to know the child, what do they love, and plug into that. You know, I tell that to parents about reading. If you have a so-called reluctant reader, what do they love? Find a magazine about it. There are other doors in. And I think finding all the doors in that we can, what's their favorite food, and you show up with it. And being their witness, I think that is one of the biggest things we do. I know it meant the world to me. I was so proud of this event that I did yesterday. And two of my friends came, not because they needed to participate in a book baby shower, but to witness this joyful occasion. And just, I know what it meant to me to have somebody witness it. And I know to young people, it means a lot for us to hear about what's important to them, whether it's important to us. I mean, it's important to us because it's important to them, but whether it's a topic, like so much of what Kel will talk about is so far over my head. He's a tech wizard and I am like tech challenged, and he'll help me with different things. But I think that's part of what we do, because the world does pull them away in so many directions, and we just got to keep pulling them back with love. Just keep pulling them back with love. And part of that is knowing them and knowing what they love and what they're interested in, and showing up for them in any little way that we can. When my grandson and I became Facebook friends, he's like my only youth. No, there's one other girl. It changed our relationship because we do Facebook messaging, because I don't text because I still have a flip phone and an iPad. That's the level of my technology. And we started sharing, we both love language. And so we started sharing rare words that aren't used much each day. And so it was on either one of us to find one and send it to the other one and have them, do you know the definition of this one? So really just thinking about that child, teenager, who they are, what they love, and how can we connect to that, I think is the best that we've got. And that will be different for every adult and every child they're connected to. But the formula is figure out what they love and be connected to it with them.
This antidote is the relational intelligence of embodying love, be the embodiment of love in action, meeting people where they are. It's very, very interesting to know that we can be that potent in individual interactions. Okay, so Kira, so what I'm going to try to do here is it's 5 till 1. And I was going to try to move through your main questions a little bit here first, because then Pam will have 15 minutes for follow-ups. And I already see Justin is saying, I have so many follow-ups. Okay, Justin, look at those follow-ups here. And then we'll do this again. Kira wants
I'd love to do this again.
So Kira is saying your experience of working with individuals versus groups. What was that like to try to scale this information of connection? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Okay. I don't have as much experience on the smaller scale as I do on the larger scale of like groups and classes. I was a birth doula. I wasn't a postpartum doula. And I think you have way more opportunity for that. Although I will say, when you are someone's birth doula, you are in their family for the rest of your life. It's just you go to all their birthday parties. And I was only a birth doula for about 2 years because of the nature of the unpredictability of it, and trying to do that with the other work that I do. As much as I loved it, I couldn't maintain the pace. But I'm so grateful that I had that experience. So, I mean, I think all the time we are modeling what it is to live the evolved nest. Are we following those principles, and to be that model? Because the people closest to us are going to see and notice if we are, and what we're doing that is different than mainstream. this may seem like bizarrely off the topic, but it's really not. I found this children's book the other day by Robert Munsch, who's a Canadian children's author, and it's called The Snowsuit. And it's a story. His writing is so fun and funny. But he also, I mean, I could see there would be parents who would not want to read this book to their child because the mom comes home with this brown snowsuit that Thomas, the child, hates. And she's like, "Come on, let's put on your snowsuit." And he's like, "No!" Like, no is written out halfway across the page. You know, you're supposed to go, "No." And so the whole story is based on, and then the teacher wants him to put on his snowsuit to go outside. And he said, "No." So he really, won't do what they're trying to make him do. And they have this little scramble, and the mother ends up in the snowsuit, and the teacher ends up in the snowsuit. And then finally, one of the kids says, "Hey, Thomas, we're going to go out and play." And he races across the room, jumps into his snowsuit, and goes outside. So I think that when parents see us allow our children to question what we're saying to them, when they see us be different with our children or any children than what we experienced or what we're used to or what we're seeing out there in the culture. I know I'm maybe at the grocery store and the person in line in front of me will be handing their 1-year-old their phone to pacify them while they get through the checkout. And, it's like, that's not something I would do. But how helpful would it be for me to say, "Do you know the research on babies and phones?" That just would not be helpful. But would be helpful is for me to kind of, talk to the child maybe and, be playful and distract them from that. That could be helpful. Or they're trying to get their groceries up on the thing and the child is screaming to say, "Could I put your groceries up for you?" That's helpful. Judgment is never helpful, as we all know. So, just finding these ways to be supportive, connecting. Yeah, really. The small stuff, that's such big stuff.
The small stuff is the big stuff. See, there's another bumper sticker, Pam.
Yeah.
Calling and advertising. All right. And I want to say with your comment about the embodiment of the values, this is why we have that handy dandy worldview chart. Which, by the way, I'll just take this teachable moment and say the handy dandy worldview chart helps us understand the values that we're trying to embody. The evolved nest is our know-how. How do we do this? What's needed to build that nervous system and neurobiology that is then capable of this worldview? And here's my show and tell. Uh, I got an advanced copy of Four Arrows deck, the All Our Relations, and I just want to show you this really quick because I'm so very excited. This is so cool. So the cards are beautiful, and they have
I want them.
oh, they are so beautiful. They
Want
have they have little stories on the back of what this relation is going to help us with. It has two of the worldview precepts here that go along with this insight that this particular relation is going to help us with. But this is the part that's really quite magical that the publisher did. So usually you have a little insert that shows you instructions. And this one, they put the whole worldview chart inside right here, and it's really hard. And there's Four Arrows and Darsha listed down there. She helped tack on the last 10 of the precepts, and of course they wrote the Restoring the Kinship Worldview together. But the other really cool thing about this deck is it comes with a game that Four Arrows was telling me is Go Fish, but really you're going to play this game, and the cards, whoever you have 6 cards per person, and you play it like Go Fish until the person with the most viable ecology wins. So once you hit that balance in your relationships, then there's a way to determine that in the
How
section.
do we get these like immediately?
You can order them now out there in the world, and they're on Kindred as well, but they won't be out, I think, until March. So you can pre-order right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so
talk
that's
about a way to connect. Like, I'm already thinking I want to take this deck of cards over and do it with my grandchildren.
yes,
They
yes,
would love
yes.
it.
All right. So I'm gonna try to keep an eye on our time here. Um, some of these you have answered. Uh, but this one is a good one. This information can be grief and trauma triggering. I'd like to support my pregnant friends, but how do I share this information? This is Angela's question.
Yeah. Yeah. That again, I think it comes back to modeling, to just sharing our own, like, well, when I got pregnant, whatever transitions we went through, because then we create that safety by being vulnerable. And, their issues may be different, but it's the vulnerability that matters. And so to just say, you know, I had a lot of good examples. My granddaughter, she got this fancy co-sleeper because I mean we slept with her and that was her experience, but she was reading all the science and all the do not put your baby in the blah blah blah. So she bought this very fancy co-sleeper that actually it's like a frame that goes on the bed, because I said, do you need sheets for the co-sleeper? And she's like, no grandma, we share the same sheet. It's kind of like a fence end area on our king size bed. And I said, okay. So she used that for one night. That was the end of it. She's been sleeping with her ever since, without the coat sleeper. So that very expensive investment is there. But I mean, it might have been more than one night, but it was a very brief thing of her trying to be so conscientious and safe, and but what worked for them was because she was nursing, and it just was different. But when she said that, I just had to totally respect her journey. Oh, you bought an expensive co-sleeper? Awesome. Even though I was going, yeah, that'll last a long time in my head. So respecting where they're at, and at the same time just sharing information, not like it's the gospel, but just I learned this interesting thing, or I had this experience. And because people do have to find their own way. If I had said to her, oh, you don't need that, you can, no, that would not have been respecting her and her research she had done and her intelligence. She had to find her own way to where she needed to be. So I think that that's a delicate balance to try to share that information, for sure. In fact, and I hope I won't offend anybody in the group. I don't think so, probably in this group, but I had one birth where I supported this mom with my shoulder to her backbone for 4 hours because she had such bad back labor. And it was an intense labor. And after the baby was born and everything was fine, the doctor came in and said, so will we be circumcising? And she was like, oh, yes. And I just felt all the birth joy just drain right out my feet. And when I got home from that birth, I thought, I have to make a decision here. So I made a decision that I would not be a doula for anyone who was going to circumcise. And someone got my name and called to interview me for being their doula. And I said, as part of the interview, do you know if you're having a girl or a boy? And she said, yeah, we're having a boy. I said, well, then I need to, full disclosure, I'm not a doula for anyone who's planning to circumcise. And they said, really? I said, yep. And they said, well, maybe we need to rethink our decision and do some more research. So they did. And they called me back and said, we have changed our decision. We're not going to circumcise. And we would love for you to be our doula. And thank you for taking the stand that you've taken on this. And it was an incredible birth. And I feel like I saved one baby boy. I don't know how many, others. I mean, I don't think I ever did interview with someone else who said, oh, well, then you're not the right doula for us. But that one thing I had to, in myself, I had to take a stand about that because I just didn't want to be part of a birth where that was going to be the outcome. And so, yeah, we have to make hard choices. And that doesn't mean I don't have family members who circumcise. I mean, I can't change everything, but I can decide what I will do. And people will base whatever they do on that decision that I've made. So, does that kind of give an example of how we live, what we believe. I
Yes,
hope.
ma'am.
So I can share with you that my first granddaughter was born when my daughter was 17. And so she lived at home with me. And so we were both parenting her. And it was a very challenging situation. It was very, very challenging. My youngest daughter was herself a very challenging child. I mean, she had a lot of issues that at that time we had no names for, that now that she's an adult, we do have names for. And we've done a lot of healing work around that. But I understand what you mean about multi-generational parenting under the same roof from my own heart and experience. And the blessing that it is that you have them is not to be underestimated. And I think one of the things that helps is when we can have someone to talk to about how it's hard. So say you and I had, 10 minutes and I could just say, tell me what's hard about trying to talk with your parents about how they do things differently than you're hoping to do. Because once we can get it outside of ourselves, then it becomes clearer to us the direction that we need. And I think most of us don't have anywhere near that support. I have a friend in Oklahoma, and every day we do a minimum of 5 minutes each way where we just tell each other, this was my day, or this was what was hard about today, or this is what I need a witness for, or this is what I need to talk about, or this is what I need someone to cheer me about. And I think that every parent needs that person somewhere in their life that isn't their partner, because we do that with our partners all the time. And we
Yeah.
need someone who's not our partner, that isn't there to give us advice, is simply there to listen. And then we swap time, and then you listen to that person. So it's not paid counseling, it's peer counseling of simply listening. So I think that would be a big help. And it isn't easy depending on the physical location where you live, if it's isolated at all, to find people, to be our supports. So when you have it built in, it's worth whatever work it takes to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
That
true.
helps.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Pam.
I'm very happy because so many things that you touched upon were very inspiring, and I took notes, and I will start with that parenting. How did you call it? Inventoring. Yeah, for sure. That touched me so much, and yeah, that I think was that is the way I'm trying to. Yeah, to follow, I guess. Find very simple bridges
I love
for
that word, bridges. Yes, that's the word.
for parents to feel that they deserve, they want more for themselves and also for their children. I resonated so much with Angela, yeah, because my story with my parents involved in caring my daughter was so hard for me to navigate, and I think yeah, it was helpful for me because I moved far away, and but I know that it's a very big topic for many parents, and we need support, but we need the support that we want for our children to be in place. Actually, about my question, yeah, I think I had some ideas, but I'm happy we will meet again. I mean, I could ask you more, but I feel fine for
We'll do
today,
it
and
again.
very grateful for your time with us. Thank you so much.
We will
And
do.
thank you, Lisa, for your beautiful idea to invite.
Thank you so much for coming
Hi,
today.
Joy.
Thank you
Thank
for
you so
sharing
much.
with
Bye
us.
bye.
All right, take care. We'll see you again soon.
Okay, bye bye.